G'day and welcome to the JadeRat. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm filming this in a parking lot, and I thought, well, I haven't spoken to you guys in a while and we should catch up. And I'm also looking at a bunch of cars driving past, and hopefully people don't think I'm completely crazy for talking to a camera at night time in a car park. So I thought I'd update you on the year of 2020 in the books that I read. I think the last time I spoke to you about books, there was a couple of reviews, and I had done the first few books of the year, and then going on from that, I think we'll do a speed run and kind of listen, get some really quick and snappy thoughts about it. Yeah, so we'll just quickly go over the things that we have gone through in the past. These are my notes. My car is kind of not messy. Actually, it's not messy, but definitely okay, now that my phone hasn't fallen and people aren't looking at me weirdly, here's 2020 in books. I read 28 books last year. A lot of them were shorter books. There wasn't a lot of novels involved. And I have written them on this 7-Eleven receipt. Not sponsored, but again, and here they are. So, Like a House on Fire by Kate Kennedy, The 7 Stages of Grieving by Wesley Enoch, and I think Deborah something. She's on Play School. I'll put the picture up here. The Longest Memory by Fred Dagua, and then Le Morte d'Arthur by Part 2 by Thomas Mallory. So Thomas Mallory. Those are the ones that I think we last were updated on. But from there, we've also done One Piece Volume 1 to 4. I think I talked about Volume 1, maybe Volume 2, but definitely, as you know, love One Piece, so I'm doing a reread. And that is where we're at with One Piece. Next, we've done another reread, actually, which is Trickster's Choice and Trickster's Queen by Tamora Pierce. Now, I haven't read the predecessor series regarding the Song of the Lioness, so Alana. But this is it weird? Duology, I suppose. Well, it's a book and it's sequel. Two-parter that is set after the original series that Tamora Pierce was quite famous for. And that's also a fantasy series. And it's really good. It's really good. I liked it. I read it as a early teenager, and I really, really enjoyed it. And it's very female centric without being on the nose. It's a well written book. I'm just like looking at the cars go by. A well written book, really solid story, and there's enough of fantasy elements and sort of mystery elements to keep you interested while the characters and the plot are a little bit more simplistic. Next, we've got Till September Petronella by Jean Reese. I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman writing this, but Till September Petronella is one of those Penguin shorts that is a set of sort of slice of life-ish, but like a little bit not quite normal short stories. They're quite interesting. Some of them of course, with short stories, there's always like a range of good and bad. But it was a short read, enjoyable read for the most part, and would recommend. It's a little bit different to what a lot of people would read in the Penguin classics, so it's refreshing. It's like you like driving really fast. Like, is that allowed? Next we've got Billy Budd Sailor by Herman Melville, and that is of course the author of Moby Dick, which is a great book. I love it. And this one is also a nautical story. It's set on a Navy ship, and unlike Moby Dick, which is set on a whaling ship, this one's actually set in the Navy, like the Royal Navy. I think the American Navy, or maybe the British Navy, but one of the two. And it is set in that sort of Napoleonic time, and it is it's a bit of a interesting story about a sailor who is really well regarded, Billy Budd, and then things happen, and I won't give anything away, but yeah, and it's a really good insight into how people are perceived, and how sometimes you can control and can't control what really happens. Next we did Hawkworld by Timothy Truman. That's a comic, DC comic, centered around the Thanagar run, like of Hawkman living in Thanagar, Qatar Hall, not Carter Hall, and he is sort of, it's also a social commentary on like how Thanagarians are sort of regarded as the upper class, and then of course with aliens it's a little bit more obvious about like, okay, this is clearly racist, or there is a lot of socio-economic commentaries here, because they're like literally aliens and different races from different planets. But that whole ideology of how having a group of society that is quite literally above, because they're like birds, quite literally like higher up than everybody else, and they look down upon other races, and how important it is to sort of break out of that once you realize your privilege, essentially. But it's also a good action series. If you like Hawkman, you like this one. The Sandman by E.T.A. Hoffman. Another one of those Penguin shorts. I think they're like Penguin horror shorts. This one was kind of creepy. It is about like essentially the man that like terrified the kids and then like was coming to get him or something. It was a bit weird and creepy. It was good. Like it was strange. You know, like about how when these kids were younger, like their dad was doing experiments with this man, and they were like terrified of him, and he was a Sandman and was gonna come and get him or whatever. Weird read, would recommend. Master and Commander, I really enjoyed this one. Is it just the boat books? I don't know. But I really had a lot of fun getting into Patrick O'Brien's Master and Commander, and I look forward to reading more from that series, because the two main characters of that series, James Aubrey, the Master and Commander, the captain of the ship, and of course his friend, the ship's doctor, Stephen Maturin, are like the two central characters of the book, and there's a lot of back and forth, and you know, as a doctor, Maturin sort of looks into the life of the Navy, whereas James Aubrey is already a really keen and very for the cause naval officer. So his view is like, oh, I've got to do everything, you know, and Maturin's always steps back and says, well, why, you know. Really good dynamic there. Really interesting story. It's very exciting. Of course, it is a little bit like heavy-handed on the boatness of it, like the Navy terms. But once you sort of learn to either learn a lot about boats and understand it all, or just skim over it if it's not super important, then you can really enjoy the story for what it is, which is it's an adventure story. Alright, we're back at it again. So last thing we talked about was Master and Commander. From there I read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I had a lot of fun with this one, and I had a lot of fun because the poetry was translated into modern English, and the version was by Bernard O'Donoghue, and it was like the Lord of the Rings series. It's got a fancy cover. I'll put up a picture here, but it was really nice. The poetry was not too hard to understand, and the story was whimsical, exciting, and funny. And if you're not familiar with the premise of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, you know, of course, Sir Gawain is a knight. My hair's going crazy. And he is essentially tasked to go on this quest. And it's such an elaborate setup, and I won't spoil it for you if you haven't read it, but it's such an elaborate setup for such a petty reason. But the story itself is quite fun, and it's a good adventure, and it's pretty funny, and it's very, of course, with that medieval time, it's a little bit random, and you're like, what's going on? But yeah, it was a fun read. Would recommend. The poetry version is quite nice, so if you can grab a hold of it, it's a short read once again, but very enjoyable. Next we've got The Skeleton's Holiday, another one of those Penguin shorts, by Leonora Carrington. Very weird, this one. That was macabre. There was I remember one story about rabbits, and there was a neighbor, and she was super weird, and then the person goes to the house, and then there's these rabbits that eating flesh. It's real weird, and it was that sort of strange story vibe, but yeah, a little bit weirder than the other shorts, and a little bit, because again, collection of short stories, there are they're just snippets, but yeah, interesting read. Maybe, I don't know, if you're into that sort of weird gothic horror, or modern, sort of modern-ish horror, but not quite, it's interesting. I think yeah, if you like horror, if you like that macabre sort of vibe, then I think it's a good read. Next we've got Green Arrow Year 1, issues 1 to 6, so the whole Year 1 series. Originally, I think, written by Andy Diggle, who's also a character on Arrow, obviously named after the author, Andy Diggle, and weird illustrator name, but the illustrator for this series is called Jock. At least that's what Goodreads is telling me. I don't know why, but it's a good series. I wasn't originally into Green Arrow, but I did watch the CW series Arrow, and it's not bad actually. Year 1 was really good. Lots of interesting lore, why he does the things he does, how he was sort of that Bruce Wayne-ish, billionaire brat kind of, and then how he really develops as a person who's actually caring and isn't so stupid, I guess. And he actually becomes a good character, which is what you really want from a superhero. Next, we've got The Black Museum, The Ghost and the Lady. That is a manga. I think I read volume 1. It's quite chunky. It's 200 pages. The volume 1 of the manga. and it's got a really interesting premise. It's about like a librarian who is talking at the museum, or like a curator. I think she's a curator, and she's talking to a ghost, and the ghost tells a story about himself, the ghost, and the lady is Florence Nightingale, like the foremother of like modern nursing, and it was really apt for that time, in particular, like how she dealt with infection, how she dealt with like patients getting treated, how she set up wards, how she like came up with like the connections for like washing your hands, right? And it's like now in this environment that's like super important, and I didn't know it was about Florence Nightingale, but I kind of learnt about it. Alright, we are back home. I got distracted because my mum was coming, and I had to drive her somewhere. But yeah, that was The Ghost and the Lady, about Florence Nightingale, for mother of nursing. And then next we have got The Savage Hawkman, issues 0, 1 and 2. Again, about Hawkman. I was like really feeling the Hawkman in 2020. I don't know. I like Hawkman. He's quite a compelling superhero, and he's also got a lot of interesting like lore, like compared to like Superman, who's just like an alien, right? Like the thing that makes Superman is not necessarily his origin on what he, the fact that he's an alien. That gives him his powers, yes, but it's not what makes him him. Whereas with Hawkman, it's always him, right? In every scenario, it's always Hawkman remembers who he is in every situation, in every culture, in every race, right? Like, because he does come, he's born as a Kryptonian, he is born as a Thanagarian, and he like moves through time and throughout locations. So what's really interesting is that what makes him him is the fact that he doesn't lose who he is, despite being exposed to so many things, which I really like. Next, and we're still using that 7-Eleven receipt because I wrote it all down, and this is where I was going to say, can you imagine if we weren't filming? But we are filming, so we have been saved. Next, so that Savage Hawkman was, the first one was written by Rob Liefeld, and then later is Tony S. Daniel, and the illustrators sort of chop and change, and there's quite a few of them, but I'll put the pictures up here. And that was the entirety of 2020 in books, and now we're going on to first quarter of the year of 2021. Started off strong but has slowed down. So we started off with Truth and Justice issue 1, which is a Vixen comic, another DC comic. I like to read a lot of DC. I'm a DC fan, and it's very interesting because I didn't know Vixen was like a fashion model. Like, she does like magazine covers, and then she just like, oh, I gotta leave in the middle of a photo shoot, and you're like, why? And she's gonna just like beat down people in her spare time. Sure, why not? But that was written by Jeffrey Thorne. It was really good. I liked it. Again, I like that it's different. It's something unique, and even her powers are quite interesting. Like, it's not quite Beast Boy, but spiritual beast boy, I guess. Next is Second to None by Alexander Kent, another boat book. This one is also pretty good. Similar to Master and Commander. This is actually the 16th, 8th book in the series, and it starts off as the first of the Adam Bolitho series, and although it's a continuation of the Richard Bolitho series. So I think the first 8 or 7 books are based off of one character who interacts with like a younger character, and then this is the one where the younger character takes the center stage, and then the story will progress onto them, again set in the Napoleonic Wars. And yeah, it's interesting. I think in terms of the characters, maybe not as strong as Master and Commander, but I think in terms of storytelling, it's a little bit more readable. It's much more enjoyable, and less heavy-handed on like the nautical terminology and the general like barrage of information that you get. You know, like it doesn't seem like you have to be super into boats to get the story and like enjoy the story. Yeah, that's good. Second to None, I like it. It's good. Next we did One Piece Volume 5. I think it's called For Whom the Bell Tolls, which is a Ernest Hemingway book. I haven't read it, but I have read Fiesta. Not a fan. But yeah, Volume 5. I'm on to Volume 6 now, doing a good reread and enjoying it as much as one does, with One Piece and all that nostalgia coming back. And then finally finished I think mid-March was or was it like late February, mid-March, that band was The Gangbuster by Peter Blexley, which is actually I was gonna say like sort of autobiography, although I'm assuming it's edited. There's quite a bit edited, but really interesting read, because it is by about the life of Peter Blexley, who was a police officer during the 80s and 90s, as an undercover like narcotics officer, and then he would go and pretend to be a drug dealer or someone who's interested in buying, and then they would do the drug bust, and he explains about how important it is to like do your preparation, and what happens when things go wrong, what are the clues and the tells of like, okay, I think something's gonna go wrong, we better get out of here. And yeah, and it was delivered in a really down to earth format. I think it was written exactly the way that like a British police officer, particularly seasoned one, would talk. It's quite like colloquial, and there's a lot of like it's a bit more casual, conversational. It's as if he's actually sitting there and just telling you these stories. And yeah, I liked it. It's a little bit different to what I'm looking forward for. A little bit like it's not something I would seek out willingly, but Boba Fett did decide it, so I must adhere to the wishes of Boba Fett, although sometimes I go beyond the example of One Piece and a couple of others. But it was a really interesting read. And then where I'm up to now, of course, One Piece Volume 6. I'm reading a Promise of Blood, which is a Powder Mage trilogy part 1. I believe the author's name is Brian McClellan. I'll put a picture up here somewhere. And that is it's a very interesting fantasy series. Really enjoying it so far. There's a really good mixture of mystery and fantasy and like lore, and of course, like, one of the central characters of the story is like a private investigator who's sent to look into the underlying case of the story. So it's a bit of a detective story within like a fantasy setting, alongside with, of course, normal wizards and whatever. And finally, also reading Untamed by Glennon Doyle. I don't know, is this like a memoir? Self-help? I don't know. It's not self-help. It's like where they just talk about like stories of their lives. I guess memoir is probably the closest. I'll put a picture up here. It's over there somewhere. And it was given to me actually by my workplace as a part of the International Women's Day sort of celebrations. As some of you may know, I am an engineer, which is a very male-dominated industry. So I think as a way for them to promote the women that are currently in that workplace, they sort of gave people these books that are about empowerment, and yeah, and it's okay. It's like, it was a bit cheesy, like it's a bit like, ooh, unleash your inner like tiger and like be free, but there's a lot of really interesting points, particularly around how people view, like the person who wrote this, Glennon, she's quite religious, and she talks about how like there's a difference between like the organized religion that's like going against who you are, and then like as opposed to your inherent spirituality, your connection with God is like not like, it's not like what religion tells you to do, it's what your connection to God is, right? Like it's really weird, like very like strange and spiritual. Like, I don't know if it's supposed to be empowering, but yeah, that was like the book that they gave us. Well, people got different books, and that was the one that I decided to read, and I thought, well, I'll give it a go, and see if I feel empowered by any of it. Not really, but yeah. That's it for today. I'll try and see if I can upload a little bit regularly, but a long video, maybe I will cut it short. Maybe I'll do 2 videos. There's a part 1 and part 2. But other than that, stay safe, everybody. Look after yourselves, and I will see you next time. Have a good one. And there was a person walking past, so I had to like pretend that I wasn't doing anything important. Could do. And my aggressive button pressing has now also realigned the camera. Why does it do that? Maybe because my phone is not steady. to. Oh, here we go.